synagogues traditionally were very nervous about Jewish institutions, communal institutions, and what do they really want, and what will it mean for us in terms of what benefit we get. And I think that one of the things that Barry has done for our community has been to indicate that what we get when we cooperate is an exponentially more efficient Jewish community that does exponentially better and more significant work. Because you quoted Aaron Wildavsky, who wrote a lot. And this really, I think, is a saying that should be embroidered on samplers all over the Jewish community. Barry quotes this in the CJP Strategic Plan report for this coming year. Faith is the willingness to act in the absence of things seen. But faith in the future requires knowledge of the past, from which stems the fortitude to overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. The faith of leaders should thus be retrospective as well as prospective. They leap into the void of the present, illuminated by past memory of promise for the future. This social circle of remembrance is God's gift to Israel, without which its people would long since have perished. It's a fabulous quote that's really inspirational. So, Barry, first of all, welcome. I'm glad that you were able to share this with us.
I'm late because I had to come from the doctor's breakfast where I had to hear the Louis Millender Award being awarded. So, since I know many of you remember Louis, it's always an honor to be at the breakfast. And when I wrote my main paper on Jewish education, I actually dedicated it to Louis's memory, and because he was such an inspiration to me. So, I just mentioned that.
Thanks. I want to talk to you about the education subject, which is for synagogue life particularly provocative. But first I want to say to you, who was your inspiration?
Yeah, my father, my grandparents, my Avi Weiss, who was my rabbi when I was in New York, Yitz Greenberg, just a couple of leaders of the federations that I've been to, Abraham Joshua Heschel. I'm very
with Barry,
speak up.
Yes.
Yeah. My volunteer leaders, they say when I mumble, it's probably because I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. So, Am Goldberg says that all the time, which is really scary. So I mean, all of that. I was very fortunate to have, at an earlier stage than most people, a day school education, which was, a blessing and a great opportunity to learn something. And then I had the great opportunity to reject all of it as part of becoming part of the 60s, which provided a whole other perspective. So all of that, it's everybody, it's a life.
How did you end up getting involved with Federation life?
Well, actually, I thought I was going to be, I was trained as a social worker, and I had no intention of going into Jewish community life at all. There's a new book by Malcolm Gladwell, who's one of my favorites. He wrote The Tipping Point, and his new one is called
The Outliers.
The Outlier. It's called Outliers, and I have it on my shelf. I haven't read it, but I read the New York Times review, and it says that actually we owe anything that we accomplish. We really don't owe to our own, brilliance or greatness or or anything. It's like we're in the right place at the right time. It's important to remember that all the people who thought they were the masters of the universe are no longer the masters of the universe. Time and God takes care of most everything. So I was actually planning on going into student personnel work at some university or something, because the role models that I had when I was in college were in that kind of work. And then, typical of me, I actually forgot to reapply for my National Institute of Mental Health Scholarship. So, and I heard that the Jewish Welfare Board was giving away $3,000, which would have paid my tuition. I was at BU School of Social Work, and I was a resident assistant to pay for my room and board, but I didn't have the money to pay tuition. So they said they were giving away $3,000 for only 2 years of your life, which I thought I didn't have much expectation for my life, so I thought that was a pretty good deal. So in return for that, I had to work at Jewish community centers, and what I discovered was that it connected very amazingly with my background and with I was looking for meaning in the 60s, you know, for being able to change the world, and the result of the 60s was that was almost impossible, or at times became destructive. But I felt that you could, if you focused on the Jewish community, you could actually make a difference. I mean, things would be different, and so I was working at community centers, and that seemed to be that was interesting and important, but it wasn't. It was clear that it couldn't affect all the things that I really, you know, wanted to do. In particular, I was working with teenagers, but most of the teenagers were members of synagogue youth groups. And most of the teenagers can only be reached through their synagogue, through the synagogue opportunities. And I felt that through Federation, I could make a bigger difference in Jewish education, and that became sort of the passion of my life.
And how did you end up in Boston?
Well, it's because they reached out to me, and I was the assistant director in Cleveland at the Federation, and they reached out to me, and because of, you know, my brilliance and good looks, and because the two people they really wanted turned them down, so that's a true story. And so that's why, you know, it's all luck. I mean, it's really a great deal of good fortune for me to be able to be in a community that would actually tolerate me for 21 years. So that was the outcome.
I always tell people that our Federation director in our town is the guy that looks like an Irish cop.
Right.
In
my neighborhood, that was actually a great compliment.
Yeah,
in Washington Heights.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was wondering. I was thinking about how one of the big pushes in the strategic plan for the CJP is sort of a re-engagement with Israel, and I was wondering, what was your first trip to Israel? How old were you? What were you doing there?
Oh, that was 1971. I had already started to work in the Jewish community, and I had no money or opportunity, or my parents had never been to Israel, my grandparents had never been to Israel, and one of the things that struck me in my first trip was I was the first person in my family in 2,000 years to be in the land of Israel. I mean, it was amazing to see the country from the air, and to, you know, it was just great. I just went to hang out and travel around and for 2 weeks, which is, you know, what I did, and I met a lot of great people.